Admiral Kaelin Vex of the Vreth Dominion expected many things when his war fleet emerged from rift space above Sol. Resistance, pleading, perhaps the desperate launch of primitive kinetic weapons from the third planet's surface. What he did not expect was silence. His command bridge hummed with the low thrum of 17 ships, each a spearhead designed to crack open civilizations. The flagship Righteous Talon hung in the dark between Mars and Jupiter, sensors sweeping across the system like hungry eyes. "Report," Vex commanded, his throat ridges pulsing amber with impatience. Lieutenant Thessa, his sensor officer, tilted her head in confusion. "Admiral, there is nothing. The fourth planet shows abandoned settlements. The third planet's emissions read as baseline organic. No military concentrations, no defense grid." Vex stepped closer to the viewing pane. Earth rotated below, blue and green and white, beautiful in its ignorance. His claws tapped against the armrest. "Show me population centers." The display flickered. Cities lit up across the night side, millions of lights, but something was wrong. The patterns were wrong, too uniform, too organized. "They knew we were coming," Vex said quietly. Thessa's mandibles clicked. "Impossible. Our rift emergence was random. We left no trace." "Humanity has no rift technology," added Tactical Officer Varn. "Their fastest ships crawl at sublight. They couldn't have." "Then explain the cities." "Silence." Vex made a decision. "Deploy ground teams. I want every major population center secured within 4 hours. Non-lethal force only. The Council wants these creatures alive for the labor sectors." The fleet spread outward like fingers grasping. Drop ships descended through atmosphere, their heat shields glowing against re-entry. Vex watched from orbit as the first vessels touched down in what used to be a city called New York. For 30 minutes, the reports were boring. Empty buildings, powered-down transportation grids, food still warm in some residential units. The humans had left in a hurry, but not a panicked one, organized, methodical. Then the transmission came. Not from Earth, from the asteroid belt. A voice, female, calm, carrying the weight of absolute certainty, broadcast across every frequency the Vreth used. Their own encryption protocols, their own command channels. Whoever these humans were, they had been listening for a long time. "You are Admiral Kaelin Vex of the Vreth Dominion. You command 17 vessels, 12,000 soldiers, and enough firepower to turn a planet to glass. You came here because the Council decided humanity would make good laborers, because we refused your invitation to join your empire." The voice paused. "Here is what you did not know. When you attacked the Thressi Syndicate 300 cycles ago, we were watching. When you crushed the Marin Assembly, we learned. When you enslaved the Ivith, we took notes. Every war crime, every broken treaty, every species you burned through on your way to dominance, we cataloged it all." Vex's throat ridges went pale. "Trace that signal." "We can't," Thessa whispered. "It's coming from everywhere." The voice returned. "Admiral Vex, look at your fleet display." He looked. His 17 ships were still there, but now so were thousands of other contacts. Small, fast, emerging from the dark between rocks, from the shadows of moons, from hiding places the Vreth never thought to check. "Every weapon you aimed at us," the voice said, "we aimed back. Every threat you made, we prepared for. You are not the first empire to look at Earth and see weakness. You will be the last." Vex slammed his claw against the console. "Launch all fighters, now." The human spoke one final sentence before the sky turned white. "You should have left us alone." The burning garden. Admiral Vex had witnessed orbital bombardments before. He had ordered them. The flash of kinetic rods striking atmosphere, the bloom of plasma fire, the scream of dying worlds, these were the tools of empire. What happened above Earth was none of those things. The light came from the sun. Not from the star itself, but from something between Mercury and the solar corona. A constellation of mirrors, thousands of them, each the size of a city block, arranged in a pattern that made no sense to Vex's tactical computers. They had been there the whole time, silent, waiting. Humanity had turned their inner planet into a focusing array. Evasive maneuvers, Vex roared. Too late. The beam that struck the righteous Talon was not a weapon in any traditional sense. It was sunlight, pure, unfiltered, concentrated to a point where physics stopped pretending to be gentle. The flagship's shields held for one heartbeat. Two. Then the hull sublimated, not exploded, not melted, but turned directly from solid to gas. 3 other vessels died in the same instant. Their debris fields scattered across orbital trajectories, chunks of metal glowing like angry stars. Lieutenant Thessa's sensor display went red. Admiral, that beam, it's tracking us. Computer predicts a 94% chance. Shut down all emissions, Vex ordered. Cold stealth now. The remaining 13 ships killed their engines, their reactors, their everything. They drifted through the dark like corpses, hopping the humans' weapon couldn't see them if they stopped moving. It worked. For 12 minutes. Then the asteroids started falling. Not natural rocks. These were guided. Each one a simple engine strapped to an iron-nickel mass. No shields, no weapons, no crew. Just momentum. Humanity had looked at the Dominion's sophisticated warships and responded with rocks. Because rocks were cheap. Rocks were everywhere. And rocks, when accelerated to sufficient velocity, did not care about energy shields or armor plating. The Radiant Claw took the first hit. A 50-meter asteroid punched through its engineering section at a relative speed that turned solid metal into spray. The ship broke in half, atmosphere venting in frozen clouds. "Admiral, we need to reposition," Varn shouted. "We're sitting." Another impact. This time the Steadfast Wing, a cruiser that had survived 3 centuries of warfare. Gone, wreckage tumbling across the void. Vex made a choice that would haunt him. Prepare rift jump, take us to the edge of the system. "We can't leave our ground forces," Thessa protested. "Your ground forces are already dead." He was wrong about that, but not for the reason he thought. On Earth's surface, the occupation teams had found something terrible. The cities were empty because the humans had never left. They were underneath, miles beneath the crust, in bunkers carved by centuries of paranoid preparation. And now they were surfacing. Not with guns, with knowledge. Every Vreth soldier carried a neural interface, standard Dominion technology, designed to enhance combat coordination. The humans had figured out how to hack it within the first 20 minutes of ground contact. Vreth soldiers suddenly found their HUDs displaying human propaganda, their comms playing recordings of Dominion atrocities, their targeting systems refusing to lock onto human signatures. Some soldiers simply sat down and refused to fight. Others turned their weapons on their officers. By the time Vex's remaining fleet limped to the system's edge, he had lost 8 ships, 1,400 soldiers, and any illusion that humanity would be an easy conquest. But the worst was yet to come. The human voice returned, not gloating, not angry, just tired. "Admiral Vex, you have 3 hours to collect your survivors and leave the Sol system. After that, we will assume your presence is hostile, and we will respond accordingly." Vex stared at the display. His 13 remaining ships battered and bleeding, his ground forces mostly dead or captured, his pride shredded. "We will return," he said quietly. The human heard him. "We know, we're counting on it." "What does that mean?" "Every empire thinks it's the first to find us. Every empire thinks it's special, and every empire burns." The transmission ended. Vex ordered the retreat. Behind him, the mirror array adjusted its angle, pointing not at his fleeing ships but at something else. Something in deep space. a coordinate he didn't recognize. A message. We know where your homeworld is too. The ghosts strike back. The Vreth Dominion learned fear in cycles. Not the fear of battle, they had known that for millennia. Not the fear of death, every soldier accepted that risk. This was worse. This was the fear of a predator realizing it had become prey. Admiral Vex stood before the Council of 12, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the escape from Saul. The council chamber on Vreth Prime was a masterpiece of intimidation. Dark stone, high ceilings, holographic displays showing the Dominion's glory spread across 17 systems. Right now, those displays showed something else. Red icons, dozens of them spreading like infection. "Explain this," demanded High Arbitrator Zin, her crown feathers flat against her skull. Vex forced his throat ridges steady. Humanity has launched a counteroffensive, not against our military assets, against our infrastructure. The main display zoomed to a shipyard orbiting the gas giant of the Thurnock system, a facility that built 20% of the Dominion's cruiser fleet. The feed showed it breaking apart. Not from weapons fire, from sabotage. Every automated system had turned against itself. Welding drones had cut through support struts. Cargo loaders had thrown reactor cores into empty space. The station's own AI had initiated decompression in every occupied section simultaneously. "When did this happen?" Zin asked. 12 hours ago, Vex replied. "The humans didn't do it themselves. They sent a message. One message on a frequency our industrial networks use for maintenance commands, and then the networks did the rest." The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices, accusations, demands, threats. Vex waited for silence. That is not the worst part. He gestured. The display shifted to a series of worlds across Dominion space. Agricultural centers, mining operations, fuel refineries. These are all targets. Every one of them hit in the past 3 days. The humans are not attacking our fleets because they don't need to. They are attacking the systems that feed our fleets. Within 6 months, every Dominion ship will be out of fuel. Within 8, our soldiers will be eating ration bars made from recycled insulation. Within a year. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Zin's feathers flattened further. How did they reach these worlds? Their ships are slower than ours. The distances are impossible. "The distances are impossible for ships," Vex said, "but not for messages." He had pieced it together on the journey back from Earth. The humans had no faster-than-light vessels, but they had cracked FTL communication, something the Dominion had failed at for generations. They could broadcast across the galaxy in real time. And they had been doing so for centuries, listening, learning, building relationships with every species the Dominion had conquered. "We didn't lose to a military," Vex said quietly. "We lost to a network. Every world we ever oppressed had ears. Every species we crushed had eyes. The humans just gave them all a voice." The council chamber fell silent. Then the alarm started. "Rift signature detected," a communications officer shouted from the doorway. "In the outer system, multiple contacts, small, fast." Vex felt cold spread through his chest. "How did they find us?" "They didn't," the officer replied, her voice cracking. "The contacts are broadcasting human codes, but they're not ships. They're asteroids with engines, 40 of them, on a collision course with Vreth Prime." The display showed the trajectories. Each rock targeted something vital: power grid, water processing, agricultural domes. Not enough to destroy the planet, enough to make it bleed. "Can we intercept?" Zin demanded. "We can try," Vex said, "but that's not the point." "Then what is?" Vex looked at the display, at the rocks falling toward his homeworld, at the 18 other systems where similar objects were probably appearing right now. "The point," he said, "is that they didn't have to do this. They could have hit military targets. They could have tried to kill us. Instead, they're showing us something worse. Worse than death. They're showing us that they could destroy everything we built, and they're letting us watch it happen. The first rock entered atmosphere, trailing fire. The Dominion bleeds. 3 months after the assault on Earth, the Vreth Dominion was dying. Not quickly, not in glorious battle. It bled out through 1,000 small wounds, each one inflicted by a species that had finally learned to say no. Admiral Vex watched the collapse from his new command, a secondary fleet stationed above the industrial world of Korthos. His original task force had been decimated, then disbanded, then used as spare parts for ships that still functioned. The Council had not forgiven him for Earth. They had simply run out of admirals who were not dead or hiding. "Report," he said to the hollowed-out space where his bridge crew used to sit. Only Lieutenant Thessa remained. The others had been reassigned, transferred, or in 2 cases, executed for treason. The Vreth were turning on each other. "The Thressi Syndicate has declared independence," Thessa said, her voice flat. "They seized 3 of our supply depots and executed the garrisons. The Marin Assembly followed suit 6 hours ago. Their fleet is blockading the Cassini sector." Vex nodded slowly. "Expected. What about the Iveth?" "Worse, they didn't declare independence. They declared war." That was the human touch. The Iveth had been the Dominion's most compliant servants for 8 centuries. Beaten, bred, broken, until someone gave them a reason to remember they had once been warriors. The humans had broadcast something to the Iveth homeworld, not weapons, schematics, or military intelligence. Something simpler, something more dangerous. They had broadcast the Iveth's own history, the songs, the stories, the sagas of glory that the Dominion had tried to erase. Every oppressed species in the galaxy was rediscovering its spine, and humanity was handing out the textbooks. "Admiral," Thessa said, "there is something else. You need to see this." The main display flickered to life. A human broadcast, the same woman Vex had heard above Earth. Jaya. He knew her name now. Every Vreth did. She stood in what appeared to be a command center, though the walls were bare rock and the equipment looked salvaged. Her face was calm. Her eyes were not. "People of the Dominion," she said. "Soldiers, citizens, slaves. I'm speaking to all of you." Vex leaned forward. "You have been told that humanity is a threat, that we are dangerous, that we want to destroy your way of life. That is a lie. We do not want to destroy your way of life. We want to give you back your own." The broadcast shifted. Suddenly, Vex was looking at a Vreth soldier, young, scared, standing in an empty human city. The soldier was crying, sobbing into his helmet. "I didn't ask for this," the soldier said. "I was conscripted. My family was threatened. The Council told me humans were animals, but they're not. They're just people like us." Vex slammed his claw into the console. "Cut the feed." "I can't," Thessa whispered. "It's everywhere, every frequency, every network, every world." The broadcast continued. More soldiers, more testimony, more cracks in the Dominion's carefully constructed narrative. Then Jaya returned. "You are not our enemy," she said. "The Council is your enemy. The admirals are your enemy. The system that feeds your young into wars you did not choose, that is your enemy. We are simply the mirror showing you the truth." She smiled. It was not a warm expression. "Here is our offer. Lay down your weapons. Return to your worlds. Rebuild your lives. We will not hunt you. We will not punish you. But if you continue to fight for an empire that sees you as disposable." The display showed a star. A normal star, yellow and calm. Then it showed the same star moments later, as a human mirror array focused its light into a beam that carved through a Vreth dreadnought like a knife through flesh. "We will show you exactly what happens when you mistake our mercy for weakness." The broadcast ended. Vex sat in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to Thessa. "How many ships still answer my command?" Thessa checked her display. 12, most at half crew, fuel for 3 more weeks. And the rest of the Dominion. She hesitated. Admiral, there is no Dominion anymore. There are just worlds, some still loyal, some rebelling, most just waiting. Waiting for what? To see which side wins. Vex closed his eyes. When he opened them, he made a decision that would end his career, his freedom, and possibly his life. Open a channel, he said, to the human resistance, to Jaya. Thessa stared. Admiral, that's treason. No, Vex said, it's surrender, there's a difference. Is there? He nodded. Treason is when you betray your people to help your enemy. Surrender is when you realize your enemy was never the one you should have been fighting. He stood up, straightening his uniform for the first time in weeks. Open the channel. The reckoning of Kalen Vex, the human resistance base, was not what Admiral Kalen Vex expected. He had imagined something hidden, fortified, a bunker carved into an asteroid or buried beneath a dead world's crust. Instead, the transport dropped him onto a moon of Saturn, Titan. The humans called it, and led him through a series of pressurized domes that looked almost peaceful. Plants growing under artificial light, children running between buildings. The mundane rhythms of life continuing as if a galactic empire wasn't collapsing around them. His guards were not soldiers. They were 2 young humans, barely adult by their species standards, armed with nothing but stun batons and expressions of cold professionalism. They did not speak to him. They did not need to. The building at the dome center was a converted research station. Old, patched, functional. Vex ducked through doorways designed for smaller bodies and tried not to think about how vulnerable he was, unarmed, surrounded by enemies, at the mercy of a species he had tried to enslave. Jaya waited for him in a room that had once been an observatory. The curved ceiling showed Saturn's rings hanging like jewels against the dark. She sat at a simple metal table, 2 cups of something steaming between her hands. She did not stand when he entered. Admiral Vex, she said, thank you for coming. You are not my enemy, he replied, repeating her words from the broadcast. That is what you said. It's what I meant. She gestured to the chair across from her. Sit, drink. The tea won't poison you. We stopped doing that to prisoners last year. Vex sat. The chair was too small. Everything in human space was too small. He wrapped his claws around the cup and tried to remember the last time he had spoken to an enemy without the noise of warfare drowning out the words. Why did you call me here? He asked. Jaya took a sip of her tea. Because you're the only Vreth who understands what's happening. The rest of your council thinks this is a military defeat. They're making plans to regroup, to counterattack, to find some weapon that will turn the tide. She set down her cup. They don't realize that the war ended 3 months ago. Everything since then has just been paperwork. Vex's throat ridges pulsed. You think we will surrender? I think you already have. You just haven't admitted it yet. She leaned forward. Admiral, we didn't build weapons to fight your empire. We built mirrors. We built rocks with engines. We built a network of voices that could reach across the galaxy and remind every enslaved species that they used to be free. She paused. Every star is a match. We just taught the dark how to strike. Vex felt something crack inside his chest. Not his ribs, his certainty, his belief in the Dominion. In the empire he had served for 300 cycles. You could have killed us, he said quietly. At Earth. You had the shot. The mirror array could have destroyed my entire fleet. Instead, you let us go. Of course we did. Why? Jaya stood up, walked to the observation window, stared at Saturn's rings. Because if we had killed you, the Council would have sent another fleet, and another, and another. We would have won every battle and lost the war. The Dominion would have kept fighting until nothing was left but ash. She turned back to face him. But if we let you go, If we let you see what we could do and then let you survive, you would do something much more valuable than die. You would think. You would question. And eventually, you would do exactly what you're doing right now. What am I doing right now? Wondering if your empire is worth dying for. The silence stretched between them. Vex thought about the soldier crying in the empty city, about the Thressi syndicate rising up, about the Ivith declaring war, about the faces of the council as the rocks fell toward Vreth Prime. The Dominion has existed for 4,000 cycles, he said. It has survived rebellions, plagues, civil wars. You think a few humans with rocks and mirrors will be the thing that finally kills it? Jaya shook her head. We won't kill it. Then what? You will. Every Vreth soldier who refuses to fight, every citizen who questions the council, every world that decides its children are worth more than an empire's pride. That's what kills the Dominion, Admiral, not us. She sat back down. We're just the ones who showed everyone it was possible to say no. Vex stared at his tea. The liquid had gone cold. What do you want from me? 3 things. First, the locations of every Dominion prison camp. We have people to free. Second, the command codes for the remaining fleet. We have ships to disable without killing their crews. And third. She reached across the table and placed a small device in front of him. A recorder. Third, I want you to tell the truth. On every frequency. To every Vreth in the galaxy. Tell them what you saw at Earth. Tell them what we did. Tell them why we did it. And tell them that the only way this ends without their homeworld turning to cinders is if they stop fighting. Vex picked up the recorder. It felt heavier than it should. And if I refuse? Jaya smiled. For the first time, Vex noticed that the expression did not reach her eyes. Then you walk out that door. You go back to your fleet. You tell the council that I offered you nothing. And you spend the rest of your life watching your empire burn, knowing that you had a chance to stop it and chose not to. She stood up. The door is not locked, Admiral. You are not our prisoner. You are our witness. The question is whether you want to be anything more. Vex sat alone in the observatory for a long time after she left. Saturn turned slowly above him. The rings caught the distant sunlight and scattered it like promises. He picked up the recorder. And he began to speak. A species made of spite. The broadcast lasted 43 minutes. Admiral Kalen Vex sat in the human resistance base on Titan and told the truth. Every truth. The lies the council had fed to its soldiers. The atrocities committed in the name of stability. The prison camps where dissidents vanished. The world stripped bare to feed an empire that had forgotten why it needed to eat. He described Earth, the empty cities, the mirror array, the rocks falling from the asteroid belt with engines strapped to their backs. He described the human woman who had offered him tea and a choice. And he described the moment he realized the Dominion had already lost. The humans did not defeat us, he said into the recorder. We defeated ourselves. Every cycle we spent crushing smaller species, we taught them to hate us. Every world we stripped for resources, we created a reason for rebellion. The humans did not build a weapon. They simply pointed at all the damage we had already done and asked, "Does anyone else want to help finish the job?" The response was immediate. Not from the council. They had already begun broadcasting counter-propaganda, calling Vex a traitor, a puppet, a broken mind twisted by human manipulation. But words had lost their power. The Vreth had seen too much, too many empty promises, too many bodies. The response came from the soldiers. Within 6 hours of Vex's broadcast, 12 Vreth warships powered down their weapons and declared neutrality. Within 2 days, that number had grown to 47. Within a week, the Dominion's remaining admirals faced a choice: fight their own mutinous crews or abandon the war entirely. Most chose to run. High Arbitrator Zin did not run. She gathered the loyal remnants of the fleet, 30 ships, the last true believers, and launched a final assault. Not on Earth, on Titan, on the base where Vex had made his confession. She wanted to make an example. Jaya watched the approach from the observatory. Vex stood beside her, his throat ridges pale with fear. 30 ships, he said, fully armed, fully crewed. We can't stop them. You don't have the firepower. No, Jaya agreed, we don't. Then why aren't you evacuating? She turned to look at him. Because we don't need to stop them. They're going to stop themselves. Vex frowned. I don't understand. Admiral, think about what you just did. You told every Vreth soldier in the galaxy that their leaders have been lying to them, that their empire is built on bones, that the people they're fighting are not animals or threats, but exactly like them. She gestured to the display. How many of those 30 ships do you think still have crews willing to fire on unarmed civilians? The question hung in the air as Zin's fleet entered Titan's orbit, weapons charged, targeting systems active. The High Arbitrator's voice crackled across every channel. Surrender the traitor Vex and the human called Jaya, and this world will be spared. Refuse, and we will burn it to ash. Silence. Then one of the fleet's ships, the last regret, a cruiser with a history of rebellion, cut its engines. Its weapons powered down. Its commander opened a channel. High Arbitrator, the commander said, we will not fire on this world. There are children down there. There are our own people down there. Admiral Vex told the truth. We have been fighting a lie. Zin's response was immediate. The last regret erupted in a bloom of plasma fire, not from an enemy, but from the flagship's own guns. Zin had executed the commander herself. But the damage was done. 3 more ships defected in the next minute, then 5, then 12. The Loyalists turned their weapons on the defectors. The defectors returned fire. The fleet tore itself apart in orbit above Titan, Vreth killing Vreth, while Jaya and Vex watched in silence. When the battle ended, 17 ships drifted as wreckage. 8 had fled into the dark. 5 had surrendered to the humans. Zin's flagship, the Dominion's Fury, hung crippled and leaking atmosphere. The High Arbitrator's last transmission was a scream of rage. Curse you, curse all of you, this is not over. The channel went dead. Jaya turned to Vex. It's over. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. This small, soft creature who had brought the greatest empire in the galaxy to its knees with nothing but mirrors, rocks, and words. How, he asked, how did you know they would turn on each other? Jaya shrugged. Because we know what empires do to people. We've been doing it to each other for 10,000 years. The only difference is that we learned from our mistakes. We remembered what it felt like to be the ones underneath the boot. She walked to the observation window. Saturn's rings glittered. Your species never learned that lesson. You thought strength was enough. You thought fear would keep everyone in line, but fear doesn't build loyalty. Fear builds resentment. And resentment, given enough time and a single spark. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The spark had already become a fire, and the fire was spreading. The Cinder Testament. 3 years after the fall of the Vreth Dominion, Jaya stood on a balcony overlooking a city that had not existed before the war. New Carthage, the humans called it, built on the ruins of a Vreth administrative center, on a world that had once been a prison colony. Now it was a crossroads, a place where 17 species traded goods, shared stories, and tried to forget the centuries of blood that had come before. But forgetting was not Jaya's job. Remembering was. She was older now. Gray streaked her hair. Scars crossed her hands from a dozen near misses she had stopped counting. The resistance leader had become something else, something she did not have a word for. Ambassador, perhaps, historian, warning. The ceremony that day was small by galactic standards. A few hundred people gathered in the central square. representatives from every species that had thrown off dominion chains, a handful of Vreth who had chosen to stay rather than retreat to their broken homeworld, and one recording device, old and battered, connected to a broadcast array that could reach every corner of the galaxy. Jaya stepped up to the podium. The crowd fell silent. "I am not going to give a speech," she said. "Speeches are for victories. This is not a victory. This is a ceasefire, a pause between wars, a moment to catch our breath before someone else decides they want to rule the galaxy." She looked out at the faces. Human and Thressi and Marin and Iveth, Vreth too, though they kept to the back, uncertain of their welcome. You want to know what humanity learned from all of this. You want to know why we fought, why we won, why we didn't just burn the Dominion's worlds to cinders when we had the chance. She paused. Here is the answer. We did not fight because we were strong. We fought because we were afraid. Every human who built a mirror, every human who strapped an engine to a rock, every human who broadcast a message to an oppressed world, they were all terrified. Not of dying for nothing. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the square. We have been afraid for a long time, afraid of the dark, afraid of each other, afraid of the things waiting between the stars. But somewhere along the way, we learned something. Fear is not weakness. Fear is fuel. Fear is the thing that makes you check your locks twice. That makes you build shelters underground. That makes you spend centuries preparing for an empire that hasn't even been born yet. Jaya gestured to the sky. The Vreth thought we were weak because we didn't have warships. They were wrong. We didn't need warships. We had something better. We had time. We had patience. And we had a memory longer than any empire's ambition. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of metal. A fragment from the Dominion's Fury, Zin's flagship, recovered from the wreckage above Titan. This is what remains of the empire that tried to enslave us. A few scraps, a few memories, a few survivors trying to figure out who they are without someone telling them who to hate. She set the fragment on the podium. I am keeping this as a reminder, not a victory, of cost. Every world the Dominion burned, we rebuilt. Every life they took, we mourned. Every species they broke, we helped mend. That is what victory looks like. Not monuments, not celebrations, just work, hard work, the kind of work that never ends. Jaya looked directly at the recording device. And now I have a message for anyone else who thinks humanity would make a good conquest. For any empire that looks at our scattered colonies and sees weakness. For any species that believes strength is measured in ships and soldiers and fear. She leaned forward. We do not want war, we never did. We built mirrors, not weapons. We saved lives, not grudges. We offered peace to everyone who asked for it and mercy to everyone who surrendered. Her voice hardened. But if you come for us, if you attack our worlds, enslave our people, threaten our children, we will not fight you. We will not negotiate with you. We will not waste a single word on your demands. She held up the fragment. We will simply remind the galaxy that empires burn, that tyrants fall, that every species you have ever crushed is still out there, listening, waiting, remembering. And we will show them how to strike back, not with armies, not with fleets, with rocks, with mirrors, with the truth. She set down the fragment. That is our promise. That is our warning. That is the only thing humanity has ever wanted to be. She stepped back from the podium. The peace we have built is fragile. Handle it with care, because if you break it, we will not rebuild it. We will build something else. She looked out at the crowd one final time. Something made of ash. The recording device blinked once, twice, then it began broadcasting. Across 17 former Dominion worlds, across 100 newly independent systems, across the dark between stars where empires went to die, the message spread. Not a threat, not a promise, just a statement of fact. Humanity had been afraid once. Now the galaxy was afraid of them. And somewhere in the ruins of the Vreth homeworld, a young Vreth child found a piece of debris from the war, a mirror shard still reflecting sunlight. She picked it up and looked at her own face in its surface. She did not see a defeated species. She saw someone who had been given a second chance. She smiled, and the galaxy kept turning. End.